the use of administrative data for statistical purposes, as well as the quality assurance processes that you use alongside that. So also want to welcome everyone who's joined in the room. We have interpretation services available, both French and Spanish, and you can use that by clicking on the globe at the bottom right of your screen, which says interpretation, and then select the language that you prefer to hear. Then I'm just going to wait a few more minutes for everyone to come into the room, and then we can continue with the meeting. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you once again, Isabella. Yes. My colleague, Patrik Wahlgren, who is actually now sitting in Kenya, he has some problem because he needs to be a panel participator. So someone who is hosting this meeting must help him.
Okay, so Steve, let's just quickly upgrade him. Patrik Wahlgren.
Yeah, that's right.
If you can look at the attendees and just upgrade Patrik Wahlgren to a panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella.
Thanks. Okay, so I think our 5 minutes is finished. So welcome again to Ulf, and I would like to invite you, Ulf, to start with your overview of the SCB register system. Over to you, Ulf.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as you said, my name is Ulf Dunell, and I'm a data strategist at Statistics Sweden. And I must start to say we are very delighted to be invited to this meeting. And hopefully I will talk a little bit slower than I used to be, so you can translate or interpret my English to the other language you prefer. So I will start to try to share my presentation. I must ask some of you if you've seen this slide now. Can anyone say?
Yes, we can see your slides. Thanks a lot, Ulf. Just go into presentation mode.
Thank you very much. So as you said, Isabella, I will start to say something about our register system. And then Patrik will go into more deeper to the architecture and business architecture. And finally, my colleague Anton, who sits next to me, will say something about the quality and the quality assurance we are working into the system, especially with the register-based census. So let's start with the experience of using administrative data. Of course, it's a lot of advantages to use administrative data, and we have been using administrative data since the 70s, so over 50 years experience of using admin data. But of course, it's also a lot of challenges to use admin data because we are depending on the data owner and how they're actually changing in the administrative register system. So once again, we need to have a very close cooperation with the data providers. It's very essential for using the admin data. I will say something about these different bullet points, and I will start with the third one from above. When it stands that don't use administrative data as they are, because our experience is to try to think in a deeper, broader sense and use it with new fields as well. When you combine the sources, combine the objects with each other, and try to create new objects and also new variables. The other experience we'll point it out is also that the system should be flexible. If you have one register or one admin data to use for statistics, it's not used for one purpose or one use. Once again, it's a new field to investigate. It's a lot of possibilities here. Thirdly, it's important for a system to have good links. They are, so to speak, kind of key to a good system. Yes.
I'm sorry, can you please just go into presentation mode so that we can see your whole presentation on the
Presentation
screen?
mode. Which one is this? We have, because I'm not so used to Zoom. I'm not an expert. I think I have Anton.
Yeah, so that's on your PowerPoint at the top. So when you look at your PowerPoint, you will see that there's actually a little arrow there that you click and that makes your presentation fill the whole screen.
Yeah, I tried to do that earlier because this is that one, but I'm not sure we have the right from the beginning, actually. We try it once more here, so we see if it's possible to change this to presentation mode. Is it better now?
Yes, you can continue like this. Thank you. This is right. Yes.
Is this right?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I will continue then with after the good links then. And of course, metadata is also very essential for the system. It's a kind of insurance against errors, actually, to have the right definitions, to have information about changes and so on, because you have to have knowledge about what you actually compare. It's also the key efficiency in the statistical production system if you use it as an active metadata. And finally, never forget the protection of the integrity, of course. The next slide is about what does the statistical register contains. It contains base registers. I will come back to that later on in my presentation, which is actually important object types or object sets. Also, other statistical registers, which is also important, that so you can connect to each other, and they are including important or standardized variables. Once again, linkages, the links between the objects in the different base registers, but also the links between base registers and the other statistical registers is also important to have information for the whole system. Standardized variables, I can give you some example from a population side, where it is education, occupation, sex, and so on, who is important variables. And also, of course, use registered statistical methods for the quality assurance. I think Anton will come back to that later on, what that means. Metadata, once again, is also very essential for the whole system, and also, of course, IT tools and rules to protect the data or protect the integrity. Here is then our system, the whole register system, who is actually based on these three base registers, who is in the middle of this slide. First is the total population register, which including one important identifier, the PIN code, personal identification number. The next important base registers is the business register or the statistical business register, which including also a very important identifier, the BIN, the business identification number. And finally, we have the third important base registers, who is the real estate register, who has addresses as the important identifier. So you can connect these three base registers to each other through the identifier, but you can also connect each of these base registers with the other in their own system. So for instance, for the total population register, they can connect all the green statistical registers above with the labor market, the population, household finances, and so on. So here is actually the picture of the whole system that we are using today in Statistics Sweden. What is then the base registers? A base register, you can say, is a type of center of its sphere. So for once again, for individual side, we have the total population register as a base register, and it's a base register for the whole population sphere and all the statistical registers who is connected in this sphere. It's also very important to define the population through the different object types. For instance, in the individual side, you have two important object types. You have individuals and also the households there. It also continuously updated, so each of these three base registers is actually today updated on daily basis. So we have notification on each day for each of these three base registers. It also contains history or history data, so we can have this for the longitudinal aspect as well here. So you can follow one object through the time for each year or each month, depending on how often you can doing these statistics. It's also independent of other base registers, so you can follow one sphere of its own. For instance, for social statistics, it's much focus on the individual sphere, the population sphere. It also has, as I said before, links to other base registers or other objects in the base registers, and also contains stock variables and also time-stamped data, or only time-stamped data. So once again, the time-stamped data is very important and very essential here for the base registers. As we say, also something more about the characteristics of these three base registers. They are once again important to the whole system, and then they also, of course, it's essential for them to be as high quality as possible and also be very well documented. They should also cover the target population as close as possible, of course, and there are also a major contribution to the quality of the whole statistics or the output. And it's also used to measure over and under coverage of the other registers and the quality of the service. There are also over and under coverage in each base register, but it's not very much of them. I think it's 99, that it's covered 99% or at least very close to 100%. I will give you an example from total population registers. We have some over coverage there, and mostly of the over coverage there is actually connected to a person who has immigrated to Sweden for a time ago, and then they decided to move back to the country that they're coming from, but they didn't inform the tax agency, and therefore we have an overcoverage there. But still, I think it's very, very few of them who's doing that, don't do that actually nowadays. But a couple of years ago, I think it was estimated 90,000 or something like that. We have a population of 10 million in Sweden, so you can compare how much it is. Under coverage, I will give you some example of that also, because in our register, you must be staying in Sweden for at least 1 year, and the people who is staying in Sweden less than 1 year, they are not in the register. It could be students who are here for a couple of months or for a semester, and it could also be temporary workers who is work here for a couple of months and so on, and they are under coverage in our system. It could also be illegal immigrants as well, but we don't have so much figure about how much of them it is actually, but it's not so much here either. Depending on it could be covered as a target population. It's then of course important to use as a sampling frame, which we also do, of course. And then it's also important that it including the complete list of every object and also every want. So everything that you want to study is including actually. And it could also be used for democratic statistics as well as for longitudinal studies. So you can use it in a broad sense, even for a statistical purpose. We also work what we call with standardized populations or standardized frames. I will give you two examples here, one for the business side and one for the population registers side. So in the business register, we have actually 4 standardized frame where we have the highest quality during the year. And the most important one is what we call the November version, where mostly of the samples from the business statistics is drawn from this frame. But of course, it's happening a lot during a year. It's a lot of newborn firms, and also it's a lot of firms who's closed down during a year. So it's having a lot there over the coverage. So therefore, you must have what we call supplementary samples during the year. And the most important for that is our May version, which has been used for the business statistics. But as you can see in this slide, we have also what we call a March version and also an August version, which is used for other purposes. And if you continue and then go further on to the population register, we also have a sample frame there, of course, for social statistics or for the social statistics system. And we are using that the last of December version for the whole statistical social statistics. So here is an example about standardized frames where we have a higher quality compared to the rest of the year. I will also say something about the identifier where we're using. As I said before, we are using the PIN code or the personal identification number for the total population register. And we have been using this PIN code since 1947. So we've been using it almost for 80 years. And as you can see, it's connected to when we are being born. So in my example here, this person was born in the 23rd of August, 1964. And as you can see, this person's PIN code is then 64, by some years of birth, the first 2 digits. And then there's a month, 08, and then there's the day of the birth, 23. But then it could be more people than one who is born in each day. So therefore, it's important to have these 4 last digits, who is made this unique to each person, where the first 3 ones is a type of birth number. And you can also have information about that because the 3rd digits, it's include if you are a man or if you are a woman, because if it is an odd number, then you are a man, and if it is an even number, then you're a woman. So for instance, I have a 7 there, so I'm a man, so connected in the right way. And the last one is what we call a check digit, where we're doing this number unique, and also we have a system to following out, so we can see which number it is. So this is very important or essential for the system to have this identifier for the total population register. Of course, we have also identifier for the business register, and here we have 2 of them. I will say something about them, but I will start with the objects actually, because here we have specific statistical units, so it's very important. Now we have shortage for them, but I will say what this stands for. So EU stands for Enterprise Unit, KAU stands for Kind of Activity Unit, and LKAU stands for Local Kind of Activity Unit. The first 2, the Enterprise Unit and the Kind of Activity Units, using the BIN code, the Business Identification Number, who is unique for each object. And also the last one, the local kind of activity unit, using another identifier called local unit number, who's also unique for each object. But I have heard that we have, because these are 8 digits, but now I think we have to doing a 9-digit series, but because they are empty, some empty, they have no one left. I have heard. I don't know if it's okay. No. But here I also give you some example about very important variables, and most of them are classification actually. And here is some example. Important for the business side is of course the activity code, which is based on the standard industrial classification ISIC. Here in Europe we have a version of that, what we call NACE. And in Sweden, we have a version of that, what we call SNI. So we have different versions, but they are very close connected to each other. We have also other important classifications on the business side. Legal form, for instance, the sector's ownership, and also geographical codes, including counties and municipalities. The third one is the address, who is actually the municipalities who is responsive of that to set this from the beginning, which includes street names, street numbers, zip code, city, and also the location, the coordinates on very, very near. I think it's 100 square meters, so it's even less than there. That it's actually maybe it's a point. It's a point. It's very, very narrow things. But here it is also important to work with the municipalities, because sometimes they have specific streets which call the same, but it's also within the municipalities, because we have seen that could be more than one Blueberry streets, for instance, in the same municipalities. And that is, of course, it's a challenge. Which one do you actually want to be here in this register? Of course, then we need these coordinates, because then we know which one it is. But if you just go for the name, then it's going to be difficult to know which one is that we actually mean in this specific register. So once again, these 3 different identifiers for these 3 base registers are very, very important. Finally, I would say something shortly also about the register-based census and how we work there with the base registers. As you can see here, we have using actually all 3 of them for doing a register-based census. We have to have information from a business register. We have to have information for population register, and also the real estate base register for doing this statistic through all these areas from employment to the buildings. I will give you shortly one example. For instance, for employment, we are using the income statement, and the income statement we have information both from the PIN code, which person is actually have this salary or income, and then we also have information about the workplace, where do this person actually work, and then we're using the PIN code actually. So once again, we're connecting these 3 base registers to have statistics when we are doing a total register-based census. I think I will skip this slide and go to this one. Our last piece, or actually our missing link, when we're doing our first totally register-based census was 2011. And the thing that was missing was the dwelling register. And then we have a decision from the government, I think it was almost 5 years before that, and they decide that we were starting to establish a new dwelling register. And we work together with a mapping and cadastral agency and a tax agency, and also together with the municipalities who are setting the addresses from the beginning. And another very important key player here was also the real estate owners. So once again, this cooperation was very essential for us to establish establish a dwelling register and establish a statistical dwelling register, so we can doing these total register-based census. I think Anton will come back to that to say something more about that later on. So this is my final slide then, and this slide is actually once again to how we work together and work very close to the data provider or the data owner. As you can see, of course, we have our statistical process when we collect, process, analyze, and disseminate data, how we actually transform admin data to statistical data. But also we have a process before that, which actually the data provider do. They do also the same, but they're doing it for the admin data purpose. They collect the data, they process the data, they analyze the data, and they disseminate and communicate the data also. So therefore, it's very important for us when we have this admin data that we have metadata of what they have actually do, the data provider with the data, how the data generate from the collection side all the way when they are getting quality assuring the data for the admin data purpose and doing their dissemination. So that's for it's very important to have metadata of this also. So with this slide, I will thank you for my presentation, and I will give the floor to Patrick. Are you there?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear. I hope everyone.
We can hear you well. Continue.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Ulf. And it will be perfect if you could keep controlling the slides, because it's.
I will do that. I will do it. You just say when I will change slide.
Yeah, and I have some animations in them. Okay, thank you very much first to the organizers for having the opportunity to talk about our register system from an architecture perspective. And I think Ulf's presentation is more spectacular probably than mine here, because it's amazing things that are inside this register system. But I would like to begin with describing a little bit how Statistics Sweden work with architecture, and a little bit about our enterprise architecture, because the capability of managing these base register is like one of our key capabilities at Statistics Sweden. So I will have a couple of slides that describes first architecture in general and an enterprise architecture at Statistics Sweden, and then we dive in more against the things that are in play for our register system. So I hope you can hear me. I am actually in Nairobi right now, and they are building outside, so I hope the sound is okay. Yeah, you can go to the next slide.
No problem.
Good. The next slide then, Ulf. So let's see. Yeah, in this presentation, I will mention a couple of standards. Yeah, I could maybe say something more about me, actually. I work at Statistics Sweden as a business architect and enterprise architect. And my role here at Statistics Sweden is I work a lot with these international standards and making our production systems confirm with them. And my recent background is I have been working a lot with our national accounts where we use these standards. But as you know about them, for example, SDMX, Statistical Data and Metadata Exchange, is used everywhere for exchange of statistical information. DDI, I think many of you are familiar with the Data Documentation Initiative. That is a big standard out there. And we also have GSIM. That is actually our information model that we use at Statistics Sweden when we do almost everything. When we design production systems or anything, we rely heavily on the GSIM information model. And then, of course, we use GSPPM, the generic statistical business process model. So these abbreviations will come up in some places in this presentation. So, but I guess you're very familiar with most of them. Okay, next slide then. Yeah. So what is architecture and why do we need architecture? Yeah, you can press the button here. Yeah, here. Architecture is about creating structured plan before any development begins. It defines what needs to be done, how it should be organized, and ensures that all components work together seamlessly rather than leaving outcomes to chance. And this is, I think this sentence captures a lot of what it's all about, architecture. You can press one more. And this, I asked my ChatGPT to generate a picture where they are building a house without any architecture or blueprints or plans on how to build a house. And this is how it will look like. Everybody's frustrated and water is coming out everywhere and different constructors, so they are working on the roof and the ceiling, and there's no water. So this is where architecture actually comes in play. So you have a plan how to design. We're going to start with the ground floor and build the walls and the floor, and then we build up. So this is more or less a good illustration why we need and use architecture when we design our systems. You can go further then. So now I will talk a little bit more about the support for base register. So architecture is vital when a statistical agent develops support for base register and the register system, because it ensures that information flows, business processes, metadata, and IT systems are integrated and coherent. Without a clear architecture foundation, solutions risk becoming fragmented, leading to inefficiencies, data inconsistencies, and poor interoperability. So this is really good to have like this kind of plan or structure or architecture to avoid this, for example, data inconsistencies and poor interoperability. Because interoperability is one of the key aspects with our registers, because we want to like to use them when we do select sample and frame and these activities when we produce statistics. You can go further.
Yes.
So now I will talk a little bit about enterprise architecture. So there you can stop there, Rolf. And you can see in enterprise architecture like a blueprint of a whole the National Statistical Office. So it's like, the big picture, how the big picture fits together in a National Statistical Office. So the goal is to align IT with business strategy, improve efficiency, and reduce complexity, and support decision-making and future planning. So that is what our enterprise architecture is all about. And you can press another one there. So, and in a national statistical office, you can divide them up into 3 categories. So typically we have like capabilities for govern and lead the organization. That's where you, for example, handle finance, handle other corporations. This is like the management level. And then you have the core business capabilities. And this is where the work, the statistics being produced. So we can, for example, have a capability of doing data collection with copy. That could be, we can have, for example, dissemination through international reporting through SDMX could be another capability that we have as a National Statistical Office. And then at the bottom there, you can see supporting capabilities, and that is typically like IT or managing networks and things like that. You can press one more.
Yeah.
And now we're going to zoom into what a capability. Yeah, you can go to the next one. Yeah. We're going to take a look in what a capability contains. And first of all, you have organization or you have people working within this capability, typically. And then you have legislation. So you must have like laws and regulation of what your capability are allowed to do. Typically, many countries have a statistical act, and you have a code of conduct and these kind of things that controls what you can do and how you should do it. And also inside the capability, we have information, and that would be typically databases and tables and storage, but it also could be any kind of, in this enterprise level, it could be all kind of information that is needed to perform this capability. And of course, we have IT systems inside the capability, and we have processes. And what a capability is describes what an organization needs to be able to achieve its goals. So that is typically framing a capability. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And one point at a time, Statistics Sweden's management decided that Statistics Sweden need to develop the capability to manage base register. So that was a decision, and we started from building it up to what Ulf showed, that we can do this census register based. That's like the final thing, the final goal, actually, doing the register based census. You can step one more, and then you can probably press one more again, and one more, and you can stop. So this is actually our capability to manage base register at Statistics Sweden. So we have an incoming of administrative data that we have set up provision agreements with all the other agencies that gives us data. And we have the organization, we have people, and we have legislation, and we have information models and databases and IT systems and processes in place in order to create these base registers that Ulf mentioned, the real estate register, business register, and population register. So this capability is quite big. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of IT systems, and a lot of data and processes. But all very important is, of course, and that also Ulf emphasizes this, the legal aspects that we work with, which we protect the data that we have in inside this register. Okay, you can press another one. And now the next couple of slides, we will take a look into information, IT systems, and processes. Organization and legislation is maybe not that much of interest, but we will start with one of these information, IT systems, or processes. So you can take the next slide, Ulf. So here is the processes, and the processes we need inside this capability is data acquisition and integration. It's like the processes for collecting data and from the administrative sources, everything that has to do with acquisition and integration. We need processes that describes data cleaning and validation, the metadata management, linkage and harmonization, versioning and change management, quality assurance and governance. And we also need some kind of access and dissemination, because we typically other surveys would like, for example, take their samples from these base registers. So we need to expose these registers internally for internal use, and also ensuring security and privacy, of course. And in all of these, and I think Anton is gonna come into that, but you need a methodological expertise in doing all of these kind of processes in order to create these statistical registers. And we can do the next slide. So typically what we do at Statistics Sweden, we document all these processes in order to secure the processes and maintaining them over time. So this is how it could look like. The yellow boxes is some kind of information that goes into a process step, and then we have another yellow box information that comes out of them. This very typical process modeling. But we document our processes. And I guess this is quite important with documentation, because if people stop working at Statistics Sweden, we need to have good documentation of how we do things. So documenting these processes is very good, and we do it like this at Statistics Sweden. And then they are an important part of the enterprise architecture. So we have all this documentation. Maybe you can take the next slide, Ulf. And then we have information models. And I would say so like this, both GSIM and DDI, I think we didn't use either GSIM or DDI when we designed our information models for our base registers. I don't think they were invented back then. Maybe we used some kind of predecessor to GSIM. There was a model called Neuchâtel. Probably when we designed all these registers, we might have used some kind of. But today, if you're designing systems for handling base registers, you probably will base them upon GSIM or DDI. Or there are a lot of interesting open source projects now that are, for example, I've seen open source projects for business register that looks very interesting. But at Statistics Sweden back then, when we created these systems and these base registers, these standards and open source wasn't that mature, I would say. So we have built most of these systems by ourselves, but I would say that they are in a way based on GSIM, because GSIM has a lot of common sense and a lot of logic into it. So I would say that we base our information models and databases on GSIM. But that's very important that you have good documentation of your information and all your data inside your register system and in the production. Take the next slide there, Ulf. Yeah, and here are the types of IT system platforms needed for the base register production. So of course we need some kind of data collection systems where we can do early validation of the data that comes in from the administrative sources, and we don't let very errors inside the production. We can catch the typical very obvious errors early in the production. That is good to have a good data collection systems then. And we do need data integration and processing platforms, and we need metadata management systems. And here, I would say at Statistics Sweden, we have built our own metadata systems, but today there are alternatives to use when you don't have to build these metadata management systems by yourself. You can use open source or look around what's out there. And we need data storage and versioning. That's Ulf mentioned it. It's very important that we have support for good versioning when we store the data. And we also need quality assurance and validation tools, analysis and statistical processing systems. If we're doing some, for example, when we do, we need some kind of software that do some of these actions. And access to dissemination platforms. I think when we are reporting census data to Eurostat, we use SDMX, SDMX RI it's called. So we do, but then that's when we're reporting census data. And of course, we need good security and governance infrastructure, so we can ensure compliance with legal frameworks and privacy and role-based access control. Yeah, Ulf, I think you can take the next slide. And at the end here, I want to emphasize the use of any type of standards. It's very good to base your solutions on these standards. As I mentioned, I would say that Statistics Sweden system is based on GSIM a lot, but when we did it, we didn't have the version of GSIM that has been out for a couple of years. We have something earlier there. So we had to do a lot of work by ourselves in designing all the registers, and we didn't have any help from GC at that time. And I think that is actually my last slide. And I hope that you have gotten an overview of how Statistics Sweden work with enterprise architecture and the capabilities, and also how the importance of having the special capability in your organization for handling and managing these base registers with the parts of information, processes, IT solutions, and people working, and legislation. So that is my final care.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick, for your presentation. And I think we have possibility to have a stop here and have some questions of mine and Patrick's presentation, if it is any. I don't know how we do that, Isabella. Are we going to have the questions through the chat, or?
I think it's best, because it's a webinar, set up for people to type their questions in the chat as the presentations progress. So at the moment there aren't any, but we can also unmute people if you want to speak. So just let us know if you want to say something or comment. So thanks, Ulf, and we've really enjoyed this discussion, Ulf, about the free business registers that form the basis of your administrative data system. And, you know, you emphasized again the importance of having good partnership agreements, of having metadata in place, and really linking all of this through your PIN system, which is the core of the interoperability of all your data systems. And I think, you know, Patrick, who shared a little bit more about the technical architecture of your systems, I think it's really important, and it's good for all of us in the room to know that there were these pathfinders who did this before everyone else, without a lot of guidance. You had to find your way. I find it really admirable, and now we all benefit from that, because we can learn, you know, from your experiences in building this up. I'm not seeing anybody who raises a hand, or don't see any questions in the chat. Are we fine? You know, then I think, sorry.
Otherwise, it's also, of course, it's possible to ask questions after the meeting as well, because you can write to me or Patrick or Anton, and then we try to ask to answer your questions. Of course, you're free to contact us after this meeting also, of course.
You know, so for that reason, Ulf, if you and your team can just put your email addresses in the chat.
Yeah, of course. We'll do
that will help people to contact you, whether it's about architecture, whether it's about digitization, etc. They'll know who to contact. So our next speaker is really going to share with us. It's Anton. He's there in the room. He's been in the background all the time. He's going to share with us a little bit more about how they approach administrative data quality at SCB. And I've posted his short curriculum vitae or bio in the chat, so you can take a look at that to see who you are dealing with. So I'm going to stop now. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. I noticed that the camera might be a little blurry, but I'm here anyway. I hope you see the presentation now.
We can see it well, and it's also in presentation mode. Thank you. Over to you.
Yes, my name is Anton Johansson. I'm a business developer statistician here at Statistics Sweden. And I'm going to, do this little presentation or maybe discussion about quality in administrative data. And my background in statistics started at the survey side, the survey statistics, and lots of interviews and questionnaire data. And I have in the recent years moved more into registers and administrative data. And I can see many similarities between these two areas, actually. And that's why I wanted to talk today a little bit about the importance of collaboration and curiosity. And collaboration, both Ulf and Patrick has mentioned that, how important it is. And so I will give some examples on starting in that quality is something that we build together. That we also need to have the human perspective in how people work with registers and how we can collaborate with others. And that curiosity drives improvement. So I hope you will find this maybe some inspiration and some thoughts after this talk. So if we start with administrative data, what is it actually? It can be quite a lot. This is, a description from Eurostat in their handbook that says that administrative data refer to units and data derived from administrative source. They are collected for the purpose of registration, transaction, and record keeping, usually during the delivery of a service by the administrative source. They are not collected primarily for research or statistical purposes. They include administrative register data with unique identifiers sometimes and administrative transaction data. So they are designed to fit a purpose, but that purpose is often not statistical. So administrative data is a very broad concept, and so it can both include well-structured registers, as the ones that we've been talking a little bit about in Ulf's presentation. And that could be registers that is widely used by many actors. But there are also administrative data that is in itself, it has little or no value for the creator. It's a byproduct of an administrative process. So, for example, if we obtain data on all the transactions from a retail store, they might not be that interested in having that record for statistics. They are interested in getting the payments right in their business. But as we have seen, and I think many of us have experience of, is that using administrative data, there are clear opportunities in it. You can reduce costs and the response burden compared to traditional surveys. Production can be faster, coverage is often very large, and the data can be rich in detail. But of course, there's also challenges. We need to be aware of the possible quality concerns. Also, if we work with different data providers, there might be a lack of standardization between the data that comes into our statistical productions that we need to handle in some way. And there's also can be access or legal barriers to the data. And also, as you could see in Patrick's presentation, there's also, when you work in this statistical offices, there's a need for robust production systems for retrieving and managing this data. There's a lot of data coming into our organizations, and we need to manage them in a secure way. But a little bit back to quality. As we know, administrative data are created for a specific purpose, but very often that is not statistical. So we need to have some precaution and be careful when we use such data for statistics and the secondary use. But then the question arises, how do we know if an administrative data source is suitable for statistical purposes? So, and that is what we will have to explore. And if we start by turning to maybe the traditional, not the traditional, but what we are used to talking about quality frameworks when we work in statistics. This is the European Statistics Code of Practice. There are, of course, other frameworks for quality that you can work, but they're often quite similar in what they bring up. But normally when we talk about quality in statistics, we focus a lot on the output side and the quality dimensions that you can see mentioned here, like relevance, accuracy and reliability, timeliness and punctuality, coherence, comparability, accessibility, and clarity. But that is our statistical output that we try to describe to the user. But when we work with quality in the administrative data that we bring into our statistic production, it's not as easy to think of output quality in the same way. Instead, we maybe have to think about quality from another perspective. And that's why I mentioned here the commitment to quality, for example, sound methodology, and appropriate statistical procedures. And these principles can guide us in how we evaluate and use administrative data. And this, I think, reminds us that quality is also about the processes, the methods, and the way we work together to ensure trust in statistics. If you remember the picture that Patrick just showed with the capabilities, where we had the organization with the people, we had the processes, the IT systems, and it's all important when we work with quality in administrative data. So, well, I would say that one very important thing is to begin in curiosity. Quality begins with curiosity. If we work with administrative data, we need to ask ourselves, well, these are examples of 3 questions that you can start with. There are, of course, many different questions to ask oneself. If you're a curious person, you can come up with other ones. But the first one to the left, is the data what I think it is? What am I looking at? It's very important to, of course, as Ulf mentioned, also take part of the documentation, the definitions, variables, coding that we get from the data provider to actually understand what is this data that I'm working with. And to the other side, on the right, you have to think about your statistical purpose and how does this administrative data actually, is it consistent with that purpose? Thinking about coverage, timeliness, units in the data. And maybe the most important curious question you could bring into when you work with exploring your administrative data is, what could actually distort the picture in this data? There could be bias, missing data, lags, and also thinking about the reporting incentives. What does the data provider have? What's the quality assurance that the data provider does? And how is the data generated at the data provider? So in some way, you have to stay curious and ask these questions and other questions about your data to build a stronger foundation for quality. So working with administrative data is never just about the data itself. It's about people and collaboration to a large extent. We have to have a strong dialogue with the data providers. We have to gain access to the data to understand why and how the data are created. and to see whether the provider has an interest in assuring quality. And are there other stakeholders with shared interests in quality assurance? I will return to that in a few slides. So we have to collaborate with the data providers, but also when we get the data into our own organizations, we also need to collaborate when we explore administrative data. And that is really a team effort. For example, in-house users of the data play a very important role here, both when we explore new sources and when we evaluate existing ones. And that's also very important to say. I mean, even if we at Statistics Sweden have been working with administrative data for quite a long time, also in our base registers, we need to also be prepared that changes might occur in these data sources. So we cannot just lean back and think that everything is perfect because it's always been perfect. We have also to evaluate the quality over time. So processes and systems matter, and they matter quite a lot. Without them, we could not really do our work at our statistical offices. But we also have to recognize that quality is the people working with the data are very important in that. So the processes and IT systems, they give us structure and support in how we work. But teamwork and dialogue are what we need to build trust in data. And this teamwork inside the organization involves many different competencies. We need to work together as subject matter experts, statistical methodology, register production, and also knowledge of IT systems. And one thing that I think we see now is that because the amount of data that is available in these new administrative data sources, the volume is quite big. So to bring also operational work in the IT department, such as storage, how should we get this into our IT systems and store it? How should we keep it secure? Gets more and more important. So there's a broad group that needs to be involved when we work with our data. And that is a good thing, I think, because we bring different perspectives on the data. If you are more people working with the data, there are more opportunity for curious questions about the data. So this is also what we work with today. We try to find good processes and working with them to make both the processes, the technical infrastructure, and the human knowledge to go hand in hand. So we work with metadata, dataset catalogs. They are very valuable tools for us in order to make good statistics. But we also have to recognize that people have to use them and use them in a sound way to make good quality in statistics. So that was something about like the more principles on how quality in administrative data depends on curiosity and collaboration. I would now like to turn to some examples of curiosity and collaboration, and I've tried to find something that relates to the Swedish register-based census that Ulf mentioned earlier in this presentation. So first of all, Ulf also showed this in his picture, that there are quite a few registers that we use in our register-based census. I would like to go to the second point there, where you notice the dwelling register. That was also what Ulf mentioned, because it was the completion of this register that made it possible to move to a register-based census. Getting that piece in place also required work from several actors, both in building the register itself and after that ensuring that the administrative register is continuously updated. It took efforts and still take efforts from many people to make this happen. So a little bit more about this new link in the dwelling register. I think also it was in your first slide, Ulf, that these things take time. And this is also an example of this. Creation of the dwelling register was something that we in Sweden started talking about in the mid-90s. And it's the Swedish Mapping, Cadastral and Land Registration Authority, called Lantmäteriet, who was responsible for building and maintaining this register. And it's covering all the dwellings in Sweden and giving each one a unique ID. And at the same time, the Swedish Tax Agency is responsible for registration of persons at these specific dwellings, so we know where people live. So if you look at the time frame, it was in the mid-90s that a decision was made to prepare for a register-based method. And the law of actually making this register was passed in 2006. And then it took quite a few years just to construct this administrative register of dwellings. And then the registration of the data in the register started in 2010 and 11. And then we could do the census in 2011. So these things can take time also. So I would just like to give you some pictures of why did this take so long to do. This picture, as you can see, it's a picture of houses. And there are the buildings can look very different, as you also can see in this picture. There are different levels on the ground where the entrance is. There are different types of buildings, and they had to come up with some way of having a system for actually give the ID number to each individual dwelling. I don't know if you really can see it here, and it's not really important, but you have two houses on the left. On the top one, you can walk all over the floor between the four doors on the top floor. And in the house on the bottom, there is a small wall between. So then there are different rules for how you should enumerate these dwellings. So it's just that this had to be understood by the real estate owners, that how should I enumerate the dwellings in the buildings that I'm responsible of? And persons had to also find their right dwelling to register in the population register. So you can imagine that this has a potential for quality errors. But it took some time and that's a lot of work in building this register. So this is also, Ulf just showed this picture also, but I wanted to return to it because this is also, it's important for us to understand who is involved in creating the data that we use for our statistics. Statistics Sweden, we are in the gray box in the lower corner, where we have the real estate register and the total population register. But really, we can't really affect the quality of the data that comes into us. That is in the hand of the owners of the dwelling register, the real estate owners, the local authorities in the municipalities for actually keeping track of all the dwellings and giving them correct ID numbers that we can use as a link in our registers. And on the right side, we have the tax agency that needs to register people at the right dwelling number also. So ensuring accuracy in dwelling registration is what I think it's a shared interest between many different parts. As you could see in this picture, we have an interest at Statistics Sweden, but also the other actors involved in the register, they have their own interest in actually keeping this register at high quality. For example, the local authorities, they want to use this data for planning their cities. And the tax agency want to know where people actually live because it affects how we pay our taxes. So that could also be an indicator in some way when you work with an administrative data source. Are there other people interested in having good quality in this register or not? If you're the only one who's interested in it, then of course the responsibility is on you to try to explain why it's important with quality. If you are several people who has a shared interest, you can team up and actually work together. So, as I said, the Swedish tax agency is responsible for keeping track of in what dwelling everybody is registered, but it's actually each person in Sweden who is responsible to reporting their dwellings to the Swedish tax agency. And of course, people can report it wrong. It can both be unintentional. You take the wrong number, the wrong dwelling ID to register at, or it could also be intentional that you want to be registered at the place where you actually don't live. So how could you avoid this? And as I said, if you have a shared interest in keeping good quality in the register, it's also easier to make quality assurance in practice. I would like to give an example how the Swedish tax agency actually worked with this in the previous year. So they know that there is a problem with how you register at the dwellings. So let's see here. They took a proactive step to avoid errors in the dwelling register. They actually sent letters to households where another person was already registered at that dwelling, and then they got from another person that, well, I'm also going to register at this dwelling. And then they sent a letter asking, well, somebody is moving in to your dwelling, is that correct? So they sent out around 400,000 letters to different dwellings where someone had reported that they're moving in. And they asked the persons living there, is another person moving into your dwelling? They got a reply from 170,000 households, and 13,000 of them actually sent information back to the tax agency that no, there's nobody moving in here. There must be something wrong. And then the Swedish tax agency could take action to avoid errors in the register. So this is one way of trying to avoid errors. But it also, of course, gives us at Statistics Sweden valuable information that, okay, this is an indication of how much can be wrong in the register. So some closing remarks. Ensuring quality in administrative data is something we do together. It begins with curiosity, asking how the data are generated and how they can be improved. It requires shared responsibility, collaboration, and teamwork, both within our own organizations and with external data providers. And quality always starts with people. Process and IT systems are very important tools, but it's human effort that ensures accuracy and quality. So we must evaluate both new sources and those that we already have. So together, curiosity and collaboration are what make administrative data reliable and valuable. So I forgot to say thank you on this slide, but thank you for listening. And I think we open up for questions again. Yes.
Thanks, Anton. Much appreciated. There are actually questions in the chat, so let me read them and then you can decide who will respond. So a question from Sarah Ndunda from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. I would like to know about the infrastructural and skills requirement for producing population and census results using administrative records. How long did it take Statistics Sweden to establish the necessary capacity in terms of skills, hardware, and software infrastructure? And what advice would you give to a national statistical office that wishes to follow the same path? Over to you.
Yes, it's also very large question. I mean, because we have done this journey for many, many years, and we have another situation at that period when we start our journey with using admin data. But of course, you need both software and hard and IT tools to do this. But it also depends, because many of your tools you are using today, I think you can use it also for admin data. It could be some challenges that you were mentioned about the storage, because large sum of data is usually coming in to the statistical office. But I think the tools that we are using right now to work with admin data is the same that we're working with survey data actually. So I mean it's for us, we're using SAS and we're using R and the other statistical IT tools for the production, both for admin data and for the survey data. It was the one of the questions. The other thing is about the skills. I think we are actually working with the same people who have a statistical background. They're working also with admin data, but it could be a new way of thinking or actually handling the data. But I think as a background, you can do a lot when you're a statistician. Many NSIs, National Statistics Institute, are talking about to have data scientists. Of course, they are also important, but I think it's even larger sum of data than the admin data. Then we're talking about big data from the internet or the website, and then that, of course, a large sum of data. So I'm not actually. If we look back the 50 years of our experience, we are using the same staff actually who is expert in surveys or statisticians who also work with the admin data. I would say.
Yeah.
I don't know, Patrick. Do you have another answers of the questions? Can we still hear you, Patrick? Maybe we have lost his contact from Kenya. I don't know.
But maybe
Yes.
I could just add to what
Yeah.
you're saying, Ulf. I think also what Ulf had in one of your first slide was that what is the importance of these base registers is that you actually need to get hold of what are the objects that you want to get hold of, and how do you create these objects from the data that you have, and what are the populations that you want to be able to identify in your base registers. And that is quite basic, I mean, statistical methodology to think about what is this data, and what are they, what are we going to, how do we want to link them? I mean, you have to think quite a lot of these things, I would say.
And also because we have support a lot of other countries who's start to work with admin data, and then we discuss it with a staff who is working with the survey data. For instance, we have been a lot to the Balkan and Western Balkan in Europe and support them. And we're talking with the staff who is working there from the beginning, and then they are thinking maybe in some other way, but still they are statisticians, and I think we need to have a statistical approach of this. Of course, we can't change the mind. So once again, I don't think for this purpose we need data scientists actually. Maybe also once again we're going to collect other type of data, for instance mobile data or something like that. It's a large sum of data, then you maybe have to have these skills. I hope we answer the question in that way you were asking
Yes.
for.
I think that's a good start. And as you said, people can contact you one-on-one. More questions later on. We have one more question. It's from Vebon Alanslet from Statistics Norway. You will know him well. His question, he says, thanks for an excellent presentation. The last years we've heard claims that the quality of our register-based solutions have challenges. Can you say something about the general trust in Swedish population numbers? More specifically, also calls from some groups to have a traditional data collection to supplement and check the registers that we use.
Yes, because I think the first one, the general trust about the Swedish population rate. Sorry, can you? Read the question. Thank you. I think we have the trust still at the Swedish population numbers. The thing is that of course there was a lot of immigrants here a couple of years ago, and then we have a problem to count them, of course. But we have because, as I said before, I think it's the same. Maybe it's the same rule in Norway. I'm not sure, that you have to be there staying for at least 1 year, and that would be that in that period it was a problem for us to know exactly how many was living in Sweden. But we have then a cooperation with our immigrant agency, with these coordinate numbers for each person who actually come to Sweden. They have this even for the first day when they come to Sweden. If you're going you being one in our society, you need this specific number. So therefore, we have a cooperation with them, and then we can count the Swedish population in another way, which also include these people who is not staying less than 1 year. The other question was about the traditional data collection. Yes, I think it's also because you're talking about evaluation. I think we have to use our surveys to evaluate the admin data in a new perspective, actually, because we have used it before, and because in your example from the register-based census 2011, we use a lot of our surveys to actually evaluate the new dwelling registers in different ways. So we have used it, but I think we can do it in a more common way than we do actually do it today. So I think it's a great idea to bring up. For that, it's important to have knowledge about the quality over time is important. So thank you for this question or for these remarks.
Yes, I think that was an important question. But Webon, I'm opening your mic because I think it may be interesting for you to also share your own experience in Statistics Norway with regards to this particular question that you asked.
So I'm not sure whether you can hear me now.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. No, it's we have the same challenge, I think, as Ulf mentioned about migrants and especially those on short-term permits and in the borderline between those on short-term permits and then those with a long-term permit. So we have a slightly different system than the Swedish have. If you have plans to stay in Norway for more than six months or more, then you are counted in the Norwegian population register. In Sweden, it's 1 year. So Sweden follow more or less the UN recommendations. We are not that lucky because our tax agency, who has the same responsibility, they have used this 6-month approach. But what we have had particular challenges with is those from 0 to 6 months, and those who are on a short-term basis and are part of the labor market, then maybe their children go to school, they receive some kind of social allowances, but they are still not kind of part of the official Norwegian total population. And we have done a lot of work on this group in the later years, and similar as they have in Sweden. But this is just to say that we are not with this. With establishing this register-based system, we are not finished. We still have a lot of work to do, and it's a constant maintenance of data in order to secure data quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Björn. I think we can have a cooperation there actually, because we have from the Swedish government an assignment to establish a register. So we also include this person who is staying in Sweden less than 1 year. So I think we have learned to each other actually here to cooperate.
Right.
It is interesting that we in this type of meeting that we can connect between our neighbors. It's good. So Björn, you can contact us, so maybe we can see if we can have some cooperation here, actually.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. This is good news. Every new network established is an excellent move.
Perfect.
So thanks, everyone. I really enjoyed your presentation, Statistics Sweden. Thanks for sharing your experience with all of us. Our time is up. I'm going to just ask whether there's anybody else who have one last question. Oh, I see there are more in the chat that I didn't see, or they came in after I looked the last time. Let's quickly run through them. So Tashidori from Bhutan. Population registers is something that we have been thinking about for so long. If we want to adopt the same architecture as you have, how can we collaborate with Statistics Sweden on that? And you've also mentioned about the sampling frame simultaneously. If the admin data is very strong, why do you need that? Just curious.
Yes, I can start to ask the last question, because it is surveys we're using continuously. For instance, we have this labor force survey. We have a survey of living conditions, SILK, and we have also others who is mandatory for us to do in the cooperation within Europe. So therefore, we need to have sample frames for that. But we also have other sample services where we not cover that information that we have from admin data, also from the business side. So I think we need to have these samples still in the future. I don't know in the 50 years, maybe we don't, but right now we need it for that purpose. The other one, how we can collaborate. We have, as many other countries in the Nordic countries, we have a cooperation with SIDA, what we call SIDA. And I think Isabella has contact with one of our contact persons from our internal cooperation. So we can maybe talk about that and how we can support you in working with the same architecture, for instance, and then also other stuff that we have mentioned today. So I think maybe you can go through me as a contact person, and we can see how we can go further on and support you, even from us or from Statistics Norway or from other Nordic countries.
So, Ulf, if you can quickly put your email address in the chat while we are talking with the next question, the final one. Fernanda Otalora from Colombia. We are working on developing a dwelling register, but the coverage of administrative records is challenging. Would it be feasible to start with registers that have moderate coverage and gradually expand as the register becomes more widely used? And what would be your advice?
I think you can start from not to have a coverage of everything. Start with something and see how you can explore that, expand that with other sources. So I mean, start with one sources. This cover this type of population, and then the next one can maybe cover another part and so on. So you can. So my suggestion is to start in one direction and with something that you got, and then try to convince the government or other stakeholders to build up other admin data who will support you and cover others, depending also what you're having or not having. So my suggestion is to try to start with something at least, and then try to use it as much as possible.
Yes, so that's a vote for a gradual approach, step by step.
Yes, step to step.
Yeah, and then also, you mentioned something important. You can use that for advocacy. Because even if you work with something imperfect, you can then begin to use that to motivate for expansion, for more resources, for investing in those particular products and making it better. So I like that suggestion. So thanks, everyone. We are at the end of our session today. Great questions in the chat, great presentations from the Swedish Statistical Office. I'm now going home, so I'll say to everyone, have a good evening. Some of you may still spend some time in the office. But for me, it's bye-bye. And some other people, Bhutan, I think you should have been asleep already. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.